Subscribe now because the story you are about to hear is not simply the end of a relationship. It is the slow collapse of one of the most talked about love stories in reality television history. For more than 10 years, viewers watched the impossible romance between Jenny Slatan and Sumit Singh unfold on 90 Day Fiancé. Their journey started with deception, survived family outrage, crossed international borders, and somehow ended with a marriage that many people believed would never happen. But now everything appears to be unraveling in silence. No dramatic announcement, no emotional interview, just a single airport photo, a cryptic caption, and a wall of quiet that has left fans scrambling to understand what really happened behind the scenes. The phrase Jenny used in that photo still echoes through the fan community, starting over finally. 3 simple words that seem to carry the emotional weight of an entire decade. Because when someone says they are starting over finally, it suggests they have been trapped in something exhausting for a very long time. It suggests relief mixed with sadness, determination mixed with heartbreak. And that is exactly the kind of emotional crossroads that many people believe Jenny has reached. To understand why this moment feels so dramatic, you have to go back to the very beginning of their story. Years ago, Jenny met Sumit online when he was using a fake identity. At the time, he called himself Michael Jones and used photos of another man. The relationship began as an internet romance that slowly grew deeper over months of messages and video calls. Eventually, the truth came out that Sumit was not the person he pretended to be, yet Jenny decided to forgive him and continue the relationship anyway. That decision alone shocked viewers because most people would have walked away immediately after discovering such a massive lie. But Jenny believed their connection was real, and that belief carried her across the world to India, where she hoped to build a life with him. From the moment she arrived in India, the relationship entered a storm that never really stopped. Sumit's family strongly opposed the relationship because of their cultural expectations and the significant age difference between the couple. His parents made it clear that they did not approve of the relationship and did not want him to marry Jenny. Despite that resistance, the couple continued their romance and tried to build a life together while cameras followed every emotional moment. Fans watched as Jenny struggled to adjust to life in a new country, often feeling isolated and dependent on Sumit for support. Yet even as she tried to adapt, the biggest secret of all was still hidden from her. Sumit was already married. That revelation became one of the most explosive moments ever shown on the show. When the truth came out, viewers were stunned that Sumit had been living a double life. Jenny was devastated, and many people believed the relationship would end immediately. But once again, she chose forgiveness. After months of legal complications and family arguments, Sumit eventually divorced his first wife, and the couple continued fighting to be together. For years, their story became the ultimate example of a relationship that survived against impossible odds. When they finally married, it seemed like the long battle had reached its happy ending. But the reality of married life quickly proved more complicated. Even after the wedding, Sumit's parents continued to reject the relationship. The emotional pressure never disappeared. Jenny often found herself trying to win their approval while also dealing with the daily stress of living in a place where she sometimes felt unwelcome. Meanwhile, Sumit faced constant tension between his loyalty to his family and his commitment to his wife. Those pressures may have quietly shaped the final chapter we are now witnessing. Because if you look closely at the months leading up to the airport photo, subtle changes begin to appear. Jenny seemed less enthusiastic in her posts. Sumit appeared more focused on his business plans and restaurant promotion. Their shared moments became less frequent, and fans started asking questions about whether everything was truly okay behind the scenes. Then came the image that started the latest wave of speculation. Jenny sitting alone in an airport terminal. The lighting was dim, the atmosphere almost eerie. She was not smiling, not waving, not explaining anything. She simply posted the photo with the words starting over finally and disabled the comments. Turning off comments is not a small decision for someone whose public life has always depended on interaction with fans. It suggests that she did not want questions. She did not want speculation. She did not want the flood of emotional responses that would inevitably follow. But the internet does not stop asking questions just because comments are turned off. Within hours, fans began analyzing every detail of the image. Some people focused on her expression, saying she looked emotionally drained. Others tried to identify the airport location and flight schedules to determine exactly when she might have left India. That investigation led to another strange discovery. The most likely flights departing for the United States at that time would not leave until early morning, meaning Jenny may have arrived at the airport many hours before boarding. That detail created a new theory. What if the departure was not planned in advance? What if something happened suddenly that made her decide to leave that night? Another mystery soon appeared when fans noticed that Sumit had not acknowledged the post at all. Instead of responding publicly or sharing his own emotional message, he continued posting casual updates about his daily life and business promotions. The contrast between Jenny's exhausted airport photo and Sumit's calm online presence created a sense of confusion that made the entire situation feel even more surreal. Some viewers believe this silence is intentional. Reality television couples often coordinate their public statements when major events happen, especially if cameras are involved. But in this case, there has been no coordinated message, no joint explanation, and no confirmation about whether they are still together. That silence has opened the door to countless theories. One theory suggests that the relationship ended quietly weeks before the airport photo was posted. According to this idea, Jenny may have stayed in India temporarily while deciding what to do next. When she finally made the decision to leave, she chose to announce it in the simplest possible way without revealing the painful details behind the scenes. Another theory suggests that the couple may still be together but living separately for a period of time. Some relationships reach a point where distance becomes necessary to process unresolved issues. If that is the case, Jenny's words about starting over could refer to a personal reset rather than a permanent breakup. But the most dramatic theory involves the rumor that Sumit may have grown close to another woman. A photo circulating online shows him at a local gathering standing near a younger woman who many fans did not recognize. While the image itself proves nothing, it fueled speculation that the relationship between Jenny and Sumit may have faced new challenges behind closed doors. Whether that rumor has any truth to it remains unclear. Social media can easily turn innocent moments into dramatic narratives. Still, the timing of the rumor combined with Jenny's sudden departure created a storyline that many fans found impossible to ignore. As the days passed without any official statement, the mystery only deepened. Fans began revisiting older episodes of the show, analyzing past arguments and emotional conversations between the couple. Some people noticed moments that now seem almost prophetic. Times when Jenny expressed fear that she might always feel like an outsider in India. Moments when Sumit struggled to balance his loyalty to his parents with his commitment to his wife. Looking back, those scenes feel different now. They feel like warning signs. Relationships that face constant external pressure often develop cracks that are invisible until the moment everything finally breaks. Jenny and Sumit spent years defending their love against criticism from family, culture, and public opinion. That kind of pressure can either strengthen a relationship or slowly wear it down. Perhaps both things happened at the same time. What makes this story so fascinating is that viewers feel personally connected to it. Fans watch the couple fight through challenges that would have ended most relationships. They celebrated the wedding as if it were a victory not just for the couple, but for the idea that love can overcome cultural barriers and social expectations. Now, the possibility that everything might have collapsed in silence feels almost surreal. Because the final image we have is not a dramatic confrontation or a tearful goodbye filmed for television. It is simply a tired woman sitting in an airport, preparing to board a flight that may carry her away from the life she spent 10 years trying to build. If Jenny has truly left India for good, the emotional impact of that decision cannot be understated. She invested a huge part of her life into a relationship that required sacrifice after sacrifice. Leaving would mean letting go not only of a marriage, but also of the dream she fought to defend for so long. At the same time, the phrase starting over finally hints at something else. It suggests the possibility that she may feel a sense of freedom for the first time in years. Starting over can be painful, but it can also be empowering. It can mean reclaiming independence, rediscovering personal identity, and building a future that no longer revolves around constant conflict. For now, the truth remains hidden somewhere between the rumors, the speculation, and the silence from both sides. Until Jenny or Sumit decides to speak openly about what happened, fans will continue piecing together the story using fragments of information scattered across social media and past episodes. But regardless of how the story ultimately ends, one thing is certain. The relationship between Jenny Slatan and Sumit Singh has already secured its place as one of the most unforgettable chapters in reality television history. Their journey captured the imagination of millions because it felt unpredictable, emotional, and deeply human. And now the world is waiting to see whether the airport photo marked the quiet end of that journey or simply the beginning of another unexpected twist in a story that has never followed a normal path. A single photo, a few words, and a long flight into an uncertain new beginning. But the story does not end there. Because once that plane lifted off the runway and Jenny disappeared into the night sky, a second chapter of this mystery quietly began unfolding on the ground in India. And this is where things become even stranger. Within hours of the airport photo spreading across fan communities, people started looking for signs of movement from Sumit Singh. Normally when something dramatic happens between reality TV couples, both sides respond in some way. Sometimes it is emotional. Sometimes it is defensive. Sometimes it is simply a vague message asking for privacy. But in this case there was nothing. No reaction. No explanation. Just normal activity, as if the biggest relationship of his life had not just walked out of the country. That silence created a wave of confusion that spread quickly across the fan community of 90 Day Fiancé. Because if Jenny Slatan had truly left for good, the emotional impact would normally be impossible to hide. Yet Sumit continued posting casual updates about daily life and business promotions, almost as if the world outside was panicking while his own routine remained unchanged. Some viewers interpreted that calm behavior as proof that the breakup may not have been sudden. According to this idea, the couple might have already separated privately weeks before Jenny posted the airport photo. If that were the case, Sumit's quiet attitude would make more sense. He would have already processed the situation emotionally while fans were only just discovering the news. But other fans saw the situation differently. They believed the silence suggested something far more complicated. Over the years, Jenny and Sumit's relationship had always been surrounded by pressure from multiple directions. Cultural expectations, family rejection, financial stress, public scrutiny. All of those forces existed constantly around their marriage. Sometimes relationships survive pressure by growing stronger together. But sometimes that same pressure slowly creates distance between two people until one of them eventually decides to step away. If Jenny reached that point, her decision to leave might not have come from anger but from exhaustion. After a decade of fighting for acceptance and stability, she may have simply reached a moment where continuing the struggle no longer felt possible. And that possibility brings us back to the phrase that still haunts the entire situation. Starting over finally. Those words sound less like the message of someone who was forced to leave and more like the message of someone who chose to leave. The word finally suggests that the idea of starting over had been living in Jenny's mind for a long time before she actually acted on it. Maybe she had been quietly imagining a different life. A life without constant family conflict. A life without cameras documenting every emotional moment. A life where she could make decisions without millions of viewers analyzing them online. If that is true, then the airport photo was not the beginning of the story at all. It was the final step of a journey that may have been unfolding privately for months. Yet even if Jenny planned the departure carefully, one question still remains unanswered. What exactly happened in the final days before she left? Because people close to the fan community began noticing another strange detail. In the weeks leading up to the airport post, Jenny appeared to be slowly disconnecting from the life she had built in India. Some small belongings seemed to disappear from her posts. Certain routines that she used to share regularly were suddenly absent. These tiny changes were not obvious in real time, but once fans began reviewing older content, they started to see a pattern forming. It looked less like a spontaneous decision and more like a quiet preparation for departure. If she had been planning to leave, that would also explain why the airport photo felt so controlled. There was no emotional meltdown, no dramatic confrontation, just a calm message announcing the beginning of something new. And yet the mystery deepens even further when we consider another factor that has always played a huge role in their story. Sumit's parents. From the very beginning, they strongly opposed the relationship. The cultural expectations surrounding marriage in their community made the situation incredibly difficult for them to accept. Even after Jenny and Sumit finally married, the tension between Jenny and his parents never completely disappeared. There were moments when the family appeared to soften slightly, but the underlying conflict remained part of their daily reality. Some fans now wonder whether a new disagreement with the family may have triggered the final turning point. If another confrontation happened behind closed doors, it could have pushed Jenny to realize that the situation would never truly change. Imagine spending 10 years fighting for acceptance and still feeling like an outsider in your own home. Eventually, that emotional weight becomes too heavy to carry. And when people reach that moment, they sometimes make decisions that surprise everyone around them. Decisions like booking a flight in the middle of the night and leaving the country without explaining the full story. But while fans were busy debating theories about Jenny's decision, something else was happening quietly online. A small group of viewers noticed that Sumit's tone in his recent post seemed slightly different. Not dramatically emotional, but subtly reflective. Certain comments he made about personal growth and moving forward caught the attention of fans who were looking for hidden meaning. None of those messages confirmed anything directly, yet they hinted that something significant might be happening behind the scenes. It is possible that both Jenny and Sumit are choosing silence right now because they are still figuring out what the future holds. Breakups that involve years of shared history rarely resolve overnight. Even when two people decide to separate, the emotional aftermath can take months or even years to fully process. And for a couple whose relationship was broadcast to millions of viewers, the pressure to explain every detail must feel overwhelming. That may be why both of them have stepped back from public discussion. Silence can sometimes be the only way to regain control of a situation that has been consumed by public attention. Yet the silence has not stopped the speculation. Every new photo, every public appearance, every social media update is being analyzed by fans searching for clues. People want to know whether Jenny has returned to the United States permanently. They want to know whether Sumit is still hoping to repair the relationship or whether he has already accepted that the marriage may be over. For now, those answers remain hidden. But if there is one thing the past decade has taught viewers about Jenny and Sumit, it is that their story rarely ends the way anyone expects. Time after time, their relationship survived events that seemed impossible to overcome. Deception, divorce, cultural backlash, public criticism. Each time the world believed their story had finally ended, another twist appeared. Which raises one final question that continues to echo through the fan community. What if the airport photo was not the final chapter at all? What if it was simply the beginning of another unexpected turn in a relationship that has never followed a predictable path? Because sometimes starting over does not mean leaving someone behind forever. Sometimes starting over means stepping away long enough to rediscover who you are before deciding what comes next. And somewhere between India and whatever destination awaited Jenny at the end of that flight, a new chapter of this story quietly began to unfold. And the moment that plane disappeared into the darkness above the runway, the timeline of events split into two completely different worlds. One world followed Jenny's unknown destination, a quiet journey toward whatever starting over truly meant for her. The other world remained behind in India with Sumit Singh, where life appeared to continue as if nothing dramatic had happened. That contrast between movement and stillness became the next mystery fans began trying to understand. Because if you look closely at the days that followed the airport photo, something strange happened. Instead of the usual flood of emotional statements, interviews, or dramatic social media messages that often follow reality television breakups, there was only silence. The fan community of 90 Day Fiancé waited for an explanation that never came. Jenny did not reveal where she landed. Sumit did not confirm whether the relationship had ended. Production did not release any statement about filming or future episodes. It was as if an entire chapter of a reality television story had been erased in real time. But silence rarely stays empty for long on the internet. Within days, viewers began looking for clues everywhere they could find them. Some people analyzed flight routes to determine which cities Jenny might have traveled to from Delhi that night. Others examined the background of the airport photo, trying to identify the terminal location. A few fans even compared older images of Jenny's luggage to the bags visible in the airport photo, trying to determine whether she had packed for a short trip or a permanent move. Those kinds of investigations might sound extreme, but they reflect how deeply invested viewers became in the story over the past decade. Jenny and Sumit were never just another couple on a television show. Their relationship represented something larger to many viewers. It represented the idea that love could cross age gaps, cultural expectations, and social judgment. When they finally married, many fans celebrated the moment as proof that persistence and loyalty could overcome enormous obstacles. That is why the possibility of a quiet ending feels so emotionally complicated for people who followed their journey for years. Because if their story truly ended with a silent airport photo, it would challenge the hopeful narrative that many viewers believed in. But as the days continued to pass without confirmation of a breakup, another possibility slowly began to appear in fan discussions. What if Jenny's departure was not permanent at all? Some viewers started pointing out that the caption "starting over finally" could mean many different things. Starting over does not necessarily mean ending a marriage forever. It could also mean taking space to rebuild personal independence. After living in a foreign country for years and depending heavily on her partner for emotional and cultural support, Jenny might have reached a moment where she needed to rediscover who she was outside of the relationship. That kind of personal reset can sometimes strengthen relationships rather than destroy them. But even as that hopeful theory spread, another detail kept pulling the conversation back toward uncertainty: Sumit's continued silence. Normally, when rumors spiral out of control, reality television personalities try to correct misinformation quickly. They post clarifications, respond to fans, or release statements explaining what really happened. Yet Sumit remained unusually quiet while speculation grew larger each day. Some fans interpreted that silence as confirmation that the breakup was real. Others believed he might be respecting Jenny's decision to control the narrative of her own departure. And then there were viewers who believed something even more complex might be happening behind closed doors. They argued that both Jenny and Sumit may have chosen silence because the situation involves private issues that neither of them wants to expose publicly. Relationships that last more than 10 years accumulate layers of emotional history that outsiders rarely understand. Arguments about money, family, expectations, personal growth, and long-term goals can slowly reshape how two people see their future together. If Jenny and Sumit reached a moment where those differences became impossible to ignore, their decision to separate quietly could be an attempt to protect each other from further public scrutiny. But even that explanation leaves one huge question unanswered. What happens next? If Jenny truly returned to the United States to rebuild her life, the adjustment will not be simple. She spent years adapting to a completely different culture in India. Returning home after such a long absence could feel both comforting and disorienting at the same time. Friends and family might welcome her back with open arms, yet the emotional aftermath of leaving a decade-long relationship would still remain. Starting over means facing uncertainty, rebuilding routines, and rediscovering independence after years of shared life. For Sumit, the future may also involve difficult decisions. If the relationship with Jenny has truly ended, he will have to redefine his identity outside of the story that made him famous. For years, his public image has been closely connected to their relationship. Without that central narrative, he may need to focus on building a different path for his life, whether that involves expanding his restaurant business, reconnecting with family, or simply stepping away from the spotlight that followed him for so long. Yet the most fascinating aspect of this entire situation remains the possibility that the story is still unfinished. Reality television history is full of couples who separated dramatically only to reconnect months or even years later. Emotional distance sometimes creates clarity that cannot be found in the middle of constant conflict. If Jenny and Sumit eventually rediscover the reasons they fell in love in the first place, their story could take another unexpected turn that no one predicted. But until that possibility becomes reality, fans are left with the final image that started everything. A tired woman sitting quietly in an airport terminal late at night. A caption that carries the emotional weight of 10 complicated years. Starting over finally. Those 3 words will continue echoing through the fan community until the full truth behind that moment is finally revealed. Because somewhere between that silent airport photo and the unknown destination at the end of her flight, Jenny Slatten stepped into a new chapter of her life. And whether that chapter becomes a story of independence, reconciliation, or complete transformation remains a mystery that the world of 90 Day Fiancé is still waiting to see unfold. Remains a mystery that the world of 90 Day Fiancé is still waiting to see unfold. But the moment that chapter seemed to close, Another question quietly began to rise among viewers who have followed the story of Jenny Slatan and Sumit Singh for years. What if the airport photo was not the final scene at all? What if it was simply the moment when the cameras stopped, but the real story continued somewhere far away from the spotlight? Because when someone says they are starting over, it rarely means life becomes simple overnight. Starting over usually begins with uncertainty. Imagine the moment Jenny stepped off that plane. After spending years building a life in India, suddenly she was standing in a place where everything felt both familiar and strangely distant at the same time. Returning to the United States after such a long absence would mean reconnecting with people who had watched her journey from afar. Friends and family who may have supported her relationship with Sumit at times, and questioned it at others.